hotties, my babies, what's up? Being able to have people that move with you through various points in time in your life and have been there the whole time says a lot. It's not for the reason that some people think, which is loyalty.
Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty.
Well, I'm 25, so I would like to ask some questions.
I'm gonna be honest, I have so much advice, but first things first, you're doing it right because you're asking questions of somebody who's already done it.
After doing my series on TikTok, Advice from a Hot Mom in Her 30s, I realized I really did have so much more to say. And so today we're gonna be talking about all the things I would say to my younger self if I had the opportunity to speak with her. If you've been thinking about what you would talk to your younger self about, stay tuned. Maybe this video can inspire you. What's up, hottie? I appreciate you sticking with me. I'm so glad you're here. It's good to be with you again. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Leslie, also known as the Hot Mommy. And if we're not, hey hottie, how you been? Oh my goodness. I had a week break, but it's good to be back with you guys. Happy to be here. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you never miss any of my weekly uploads. For those of you who may not know, this channel is all about me teaching you how you can radically live your most magnificent life. Through travel, through advice, inspiration, and even style, I'm trying to ensure that you too can have a hot life. So today we're gonna talk about all of the things that I would say to my younger self. You saw some tidbits of my TikTok series that I did called Advice from a Hot Mom in Her 30s. I had such a good time just sort of like explaining things and really kind of thinking back and reaching into the past to see how my life has vastly changed from when I was 25 to now that I'm 21 days from being 40 years old.
Oh my God!
What? So I wanted to come here and sit down with you hotties and just talk about some of the things that I may say to my younger self if given the opportunity. Obviously, none of us can really go back and change anything. It is what it is. We have not discovered time travel. And I do truly believe that whatever we've kind of experienced and gone through was for a reason, whether we know it or not, whether we can say it was good or bad or not. It's all a part of our story. It is the thread line of who we are. And it just made sort of the adventure a little more fun or a little more rough. But if given the chance to talk to little Leslie, I do have some things that I would say. When I think about young me in this picture, oh my God, first of all, she's so cute. You're adorable, Leslie, okay? Please, Gerber baby. The one thing that I would tell her is, it's okay that you're sensitive. It's okay. I think sometimes the sort of accusation of being sensitive is thrown around onto people as sort of a problem. People are like, oh my gosh, you're so sensitive, or, you know, you feel everything. But when you're a person who feels, it actually ends up being something that you can tap into to help yourself and other people in a way that sometimes people don't understand. It allows you to be more compassionate. You're someone that has a lot of empathy. You're someone who finds it easier kind of to understand what people are going through in ways that most people who are not sensitive to other people's struggles or their experiences don't. And I think that I was told I was sensitive a lot, and it was never used positively. You know, nobody was ever like, oh, you're so sensitive, Leslie. That's such a good thing. It was more like, let me say whatever I want to say to you, and you don't have a right to get upset about it, be uncomfortable with it, or be angry because you're just being sensitive. And so it was hard, right? Those things were kind of challenging. And so I think that I would tell myself, it's okay. Be sensitive. Hold on to that sensitivity. Don't try to harden your heart to protect yourself. Don't harden your responses to people. Don't carry on other people's idea of what it means to move in the world like peacefully. It allowed me to be a person that people felt comfortable just talking to and sharing with. I think it made it so I was able to make friends easily and keep them for a long time. It made it so that I was able to talk to people that I think in ways other people would never get the opportunity to do. And so I'm appreciative of that sensitivity now. So I would tell this young baby, I would tell her, it's okay to be sensitive. Don't let them make you feel bad about it. It only gives you strength and makes you an even better human. The next thing I would tell myself is, it's okay to be comfortable with who you are. That's okay. Some people's discovery of finding out who they are takes longer than others, right? We are all traversing our own road and going through the world at our own pace. But more often than not, people will try to put you in a position to make it so that you're going through the world the exact same way that they are on the timeline that they're going through it, because it makes them more comfortable. When I was growing up and I was a kid, I would probably say 8 to, 12 or 13, I made people uncomfortable. And the discomfort came from the fact that I was very solidified in my thought process, and not in an arrogant way or a way that I thought I knew everything, but I was comfortable asking questions that other people may not always have answers to. I was comfortable with sort of disrupting the norm and saying, like, that doesn't feel right to me, or why are we doing that? Right? I was not somebody that sort of accepted status quo and just went along with it because I was supposed to. That wasn't my personality. But as I continued to grow up, I noticed that other people were very uncomfortable with that. As a young Black girl, you're often told to be seen and not heard. But if you're seen, you only want to be seen in a very wholesome way. You don't want to look too angry, but you don't want to look mean. You want to look friendly, but you also don't want to be fast. There are so many mixed messages that young Black girls are getting, and then often told to just sort of shed when they become adults. And, like, okay, now go on and be a girl and flourish. Be a woman now.
What?
It doesn't work that way. During that time, that sort of like adolescence, tween years, I really felt a lot of that when people made it known that I shouldn't know who I was. I would tell myself not to listen to them. Ultimately, I would be like, no, stick with that. Ask questions. I think a lot of curiosity is broken in people early on. We live in a society that wants us all to operate at a consensus. And the more we try to operate outside of that consensus, the more uncomfortable people get. And the reason they do is because it has a lot to do with identity. If you challenge somebody's identity, they're not sure what to do with it. And as a kid, I think I questioned a lot of people's choices, which caused them to question their identity. It caused them to ask themselves why. And a lot of times people don't like to answer why. And not because they don't want to give you a reason, but because they don't know. Don't allow people to make you feel like your convictions are not real because you're young. You don't want to allow other people to break your curiosity and your natural wonderment. And I think that sometimes people tried to do that to me when I was young. They tried to be like, oh, girl, don't worry about that. Why are you thinking about that? I'm a thinker.
Bitch, you think it's small. We need to be thinking big.
I've always been a thinker. I always will be a thinker. And I want my young self to know that that's okay, that we haven't grown out of it. We are still thinking, okay? We are still asking the big questions. We are still wanting to discover so much. And while there were times where we got away from that curiosity and some of that wonderment, it is still here. We still do ask a lot of questions, and you should know that it has been beneficial to us, and stick with it. Don't question it as much. Another thing I would tell myself is, you're beautiful. And I think that this is sort of a standard thing most people would tell themselves, because we all go through the process of questioning, like, is this face, this mug, right, what I got, is it really up to par?
You're very pretty.
I get it. We all question that. But this girl right here, she questioned that a lot. And the reason she questioned it so much was because of her environment, was because she didn't necessarily grow up in a place where people were constantly raving about her beauty. People raved about my mind. They were always saying how smart I was. And I think that a lot of girls, and definitely Black girls, usually in their lives get to be one of three things. And you can answer this for yourself, and you'll probably see it to be true. You either get to be the pretty person, the smart person, or the funny person. Now ask yourself which of those three you've been growing up. For me, it was very much the smart person, and then the funny person, and then the pretty person. And so I leaned into my intelligence. I figured out very quickly that that was a space where I could thrive, that that's how I would be validated, and that's where I would be praised if I read well or I got an award or I was doing something good, which then made me question and not really feel comfortable or solidified in what I looked like. I think compounding that with growing up in an environment where I was certainly one of only, like one black girl in an honors class, the only black girl in choir, the only black girl in band, all of these things that singled me out already. I just didn't have anybody to look at and say, oh, well, you look like me and they like you and they think you're pretty, so you must be. That didn't occur to me. But I would tell her, Leslie, you're beautiful.
I think all black women are beautiful. And by black woman, I mean me.
You're gorgeous. You are a stunning, warm, kind girl deep inside. And that radiates from you even when you don't see it. No matter what, your hair looked like sometimes, no matter what people may have said about your teeth at the time, kids are mean. People can be mean. And often too, when you have an air of confidence about you and people look at you and maybe you're not the quote unquote standard of beauty or what we've declared to be so beautiful in this world, then they'll point out the little things that they think you should be ashamed about. Oh, well, your legs are too short, or, your neck is too long, or your teeth are crooked, or your hair is not this. So they'll point out the things to you to make you feel like you shouldn't be confident. You shouldn't like yourself that much because you have all these problems with you. And so I would tell her, don't allow other people's insecurities with themselves to make you question you. Even if the people that are surrounding you are not telling you that and they're not validating that feeling, it doesn't make it untrue. It doesn't make it something that is not real. I would tell her, girl, look at you. Okay, look at you. You get the braces, you get Invisalign, you figured out the hair. And in fact, you were so worried about hair and then you cut it all off. Okay, girl, beauty is one, yes, we know within the eye of the beholder. But also when you feel beautiful about yourself and when you look in the mirror and you're not looking for somebody else to confirm it for you, you'll find that they confirm it more often because you're not looking for it. And so we are comfortable now. We like what we look like. We love our face. And to be honest, the face hasn't changed that much since you were 5 and 10 and 13 and 17. It's still here, okay? The mug is sitting, honey. It eats. And now we figured out how to dress it up, make it up. So yes, I would tell her, you're beautiful. I will tell you, if you're looking at this and you still haven't told yourself that now, you are. As long as you know that, you would be surprised who else discovers the beauty that you hold when you start to discover it for yourself. Okay. Now this thing I would tell myself, it's going to be kind of funny, but it's real. Girl, let that man alone. And not even man, let that boy alone. Let that alone. Okay, just let him alone. And I think most of us, especially girls, would tell our younger selves, let that boy alone. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. I wasn't even a person that was like boy crazy per se, right? I don't think I was. What I've always been is like the relationship girly, right? I've always been a girlfriend. I mean, I had my first little boyfriend when I was like 10 years old. And dated him, and I use dated lightly because we weren't going anywhere, but he was sweet to me and I enjoyed him and really liked him. He got close to my family liked him. So, we grew up together. Subsequently, I think sometimes I would contort myself to like try to be what these boys wanted me to be, because some of it was like, oh, you too hard, you so rough. And a lot of that obviously was a protective mechanism. It was a defense mechanism. It was me trying to, guard my heart from being hurt, guard myself from experiencing, troubles. Don't try to convince them of how cool you are. Don't try to convince them of how amazing you are, because if someone cannot see that immediately, they're not worth it. They are not worth the convincing. Okay. And it is not my job to convince you of how amazing I am. Because first of all, you ought to be saying thank you. You ought to be grateful that I'm even looking upside your head, because I don't have to. Okay. And this is the energy that I need more women and more young girls to have behind these boys, because men and boys are socialized for the world to operate for them, right? They get to walk around comfortable. They get to do whatever they want. The world will say, boys will be boys. Let them grow up. They can sow their wild oats. The world is such that they get to experience life however they want. And we are just supposed to sort of fall in between the crevices of when they decide to give us their time, when they decide we're worthy enough to be involved in their life. And so I would tell younger me, first and foremost, nobody can make you worthy. You already are. So leave that fool where he stands. Okay? If you have to convince him that you are a good choice, you already setting yourself back, sis. You shouldn't have to convince anybody. You're smart. Okay. You're intelligent. You're talented. You're athletic. You're beautiful. All of these things. And you trying to convince one little knucklehead that he should pick you over somebody else. Also, why are you pitting yourself against someone? If that's the person that he wants, go on. Go on. Go do that. Do not continue to put yourself in a position to have to prove why you are worthy of someone's time. I want grown women to know that. I want teenage girls to know that. I teach my own daughters that. Don't let somebody tell you whether or not you're worthy. You already are. And if they don't notice it already, no problem. It's no beef. You don't know a good thing when it hits you. You don't know a good thing when it approaches you. And it's not my business to convince you. It's your business to go figure out what good really is. So I would tell my younger self, girl, let him alone. Let him alone. Okay. The next thing I would tell myself is something that I thought I was always doing, but I'm realizing the more and more I look back, I didn't do it often enough. And it's to trust your gut. Your gut will usually tell you what is the choice you should be making. It's the thing that's going to say like, this feels good and this doesn't. And I think that when we come to this planet, when we are born, right, is when we're in our most true form, because we're not thinking. We haven't been taught like the difference of quote unquote right and wrong. We haven't been taught, social norms. We don't know, the social cues. We are just being. We are humans being. And we get away from those true gut feelings. It's why when you meet little kids, people always say like, little kids are so honest. Well, they don't have any choice but to be honest because they haven't been broken enough yet for y'all to tell them that something is wrong. And so that's why they'll just say things like, oh, how come you're bald? Or like, oh, your breath kind of stinks. They just say it because they don't realize that, they haven't been taught, oh, that's rude or that's not something you should say. And we do have to teach people that, right? We need to teach people how to have tact, because honesty does not have to be brutal. It doesn't have to hurt you or break you down or offend you. But what we have to teach people is to be honest, because then they will still be able to trust themselves and trust their gut. I would tell little Leslie to trust that more, that's okay. Maybe you're a person that's just more intuitive than other people. And there are some folks who operate in the world from a place where they don't allow others to break their intuition, where they don't allow people to sort of steal that from them. And I admire those people so much who don't have to clamor and climb to get back to that. But I think that I'm climbing and have climbed out of that. And now, I don't question it as much, but there was a long while where I was kind of like, no, that can't be right. Or no, I should probably just go ahead and do it. And I do think that put me into some situations. It made me experience and stay in relationships that I probably should have stayed in because I questioned myself when I should have just gone with my intuition. So that is something that I would certainly tell my younger self, which is, trust you. You can trust you. It isn't until you start letting yourself down when you ignore your gut, when you ignore what you're feeling, that you then start to feel like, well, dang, I can't trust myself. And you don't want to feel like that. That's not a space that you want to be in where you can't trust you. And so, yeah. I would simply tell her, Leslie, when you feel it, trust it, know it to be true. And if something changes and it's different later on, fine, that's okay. But go with your gut, You can trust it, believe it. Okay, now this one, I think it's something a lot of women would probably agree with because, again, you know, what we think is so terrible, we come to realize, baby, it was not. And so that is love that body. Girl, love that body. Oh my God. If I could go back and tell myself when I was 18, 19, 20, you know, to just enjoy the body I was in. I'm going to tell you this story. I was trying out to be in a fashion show and I'm walking, you know, and here's the thing about me, honey, I can walk. Okay. I might be little, but I've been blessed to be a short person with long legs and I can strut in a heel. It's nothing you couldn't tell me about getting in some 6-inch heels and just walking it. Okay. I just feel like the world is my runway. I am here to dazzle. It was a Howard fashion show, actually. And if you know anything about the Howard fashion show, especially during homecoming, it's like a big deal. And so I made it to like third rounds, like which was sort of the last cut of people. And so, you know, I had made it and was going on. And I remember I was doing my final walk and I'm down and someone comes up to me and they like take my shirt and they roll my shirt up so you can see my midriff. And basically like looked at my stomach and like made me walk again and then was like, and dismissed me. And I was like, talk about taken aback. And at the time, you know, I was maybe 130 pounds, maybe. You know, oh, I felt so bad about myself. I was just like, wow. I was just so embarrassed and I felt so bad about myself. I harbored that for a really long time. Like, oh my God, I have to lose weight. I need to eat less. I need to go work out. And looking back, oh my God, I'm like, girl, you were fine. Okay, I mean, you could probably hardly even pinch the little piece of fat that they were so worried about. But I allowed it to make me feel bad about myself. I allowed it, you know, to make me look in the mirror and look at my body and feel a way that I hadn't felt. And so I would tell my younger self, ignore that bullshit. Okay, you do not, And I want other young girls to know that. I want other 20-year-old girls to know that. I want girls in their 40s to know that. I want women in their 30s to know that. Your body is fine. We are not all the same shape. We are not all the same size. We are not meant to be. And we're not cookies. Like, we don't just come from a little cookie cutter. You know, this is what we look like. And I do think that culturally in America, we focus so much on bodies. You know, our body is like the thing that people look at. And so I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a person that goes to the gym all the time and does these things. And when it started, it was definitely like, yo, I got to lose some weight because I'm uncomfortable and I don't feel good in this body. But now I'm going for my mental health and just to, you know, stay strong come the zombie apocalypse. But I would tell her, don't internalize that. Don't own those feelings. They don't belong to you. So this last thing that I want to share is kind of controversial. Because I think growing up the way in which I grew up, which was, you know, very churched, very indoctrinated with, you know, this is how you're supposed to live as a young woman in Christ. And this is how you're supposed to, you know, present yourself into the world. And a lot of that involves just denying yourself the pleasures of life, whether, you know, no matter what they may be. And so I think one thing that I would tell myself is that pleasure is okay, right? In whatever form that comes in. If it's pleasing and pleasurable to you, it's okay. And then this doesn't mean that in everything you do, you have to chase pleasure, because then that starts to become ridiculous and you need to get back to the real world. But I do think that we need to stop telling girls, and especially young Black girls, that they're not due pleasure in life. And I think I spent so much of my time and so much of my younger years trying to maintain some sort of moral high ground, which took away the pleasures of life. It took me away from having fun at times. It took me away from experiencing things that I may not get another chance to experience in the time or the body or the way that I was, because I was so afraid of being condemned for them. And when I look back, it's like, nobody is condemning me. You know, nobody was coming to get me. God himself was not coming down to tell me how horrible I was. And had I not spent so much time worrying about how I was going to end up or how I was going to bring shame to myself and my family, I think I would have learned more early on in life what things that I enjoyed and what actually did bring me pleasure. When we take away that power from ourselves and we take it away from other people, primarily the girls in our life and, you know, daughters and sisters and what have you, what we're taking away is their ability to answer the question, what do you want? And if you're never allowed to explore your pleasures, if you're never allowed to think about your desires, you don't really know what you want. And it's a hard question to answer. And I think that, you know, you often get sort of asked it like, well, what do you want? And it can be something small, whether it's like, what do you want to eat? Or where do you want to go? And I think this is a lot of the reason that men and women have these sort of contentious conversations. And even online, you know, the sort of societal norm is like, girls never know what they want to eat. But then when you get something to eat, they pick off your plate. But what you're not understanding is behind that, the reason that they don't know what they want to eat, the reason they can't just answer these questions of where you want to go is because they were never allowed to explore their pleasure. They weren't given the opportunity to figure out what they wanted. And so more often than not, they're not even trying to be annoying or they're not even trying to be contrarian. They don't know. They really don't know. And so I would tell my younger self to explore your pleasures, dive into them. See if you like it. If something comes across you and it's healthy and it's worthwhile and it's not, you know, to the detriment of any, do it. Explore it. Who cares? Very little will happen to you, you know, exploring your pleasure. And if you're doing it in a safe place and you're doing it and it's fun and it brings you joy, enjoy that. Relish in that. Now as an adult, I'm starting to like think about it, you know, but it gets more difficult to do when you're a person with responsibilities, when you're a person with commitments, when you're a person who is dedicated to things. It's more challenging to sort of chase after these like pleasures of life. And I think that's what youth is for. You should do that, you know. I understand now why people say like 40 is the new 20 because you sort of have this like, I don't give a F attitude compounded with typically having more money and more access and more knowledge. And so it allows you to sort of kind of throw more caution to the wind because you're like, who gonna check me, boo? You know what I mean? Like, I'm 40 years old. You ain't about to tell me I can't do something. So I understand that. But what I would want the younger me to know, what I want my daughters to know, what I want you to know is that pursuing your pleasure is not bad. It doesn't save you. It doesn't make you better because you deny yourself pleasures. In fact, it's only a detriment to you. And so that's the thing that I would tell me is enjoy the pleasures in life, seek them out, and know that feeling good is just as important as doing good. All right, hotties, that's all for me today. I appreciate you for sitting through this conversation that I've had with myself. I hope that some of these things that I would tell myself maybe help you think about what you would tell your younger self, but more importantly, help you discover some things that perhaps you can change today to make your life an even more magnificent one. I love to be able to sit and sort of reflect and look back on things. I'm a person that has a lot of like nostalgic feelings. It's a big deal for me. But as I'm counting down to this huge milestone birthday, I think it's important to reflect and to look back on life, not as a way to say like, oh gosh, I wish I had done this, or why didn't I make a different decision, but to understand that each of those experiences I've had have created who I am today, and to learn to love them so that I can love me now and prepare her even more for another future me. Thank you so much for being here. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to give me a big thumbs up on this video so even more hotties on YouTube can find it, and drop me a comment below about one thing that you would change about yourself. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, drop me a big heart at the end so that I know you were here and I can say, hey girl, thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate you being here and I can't wait until I see you next time. Bye.